All right, we are live. Hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. I had a chance to get to know our guest speaker just briefly before we started to record, and I know that she's got a lot of knowledge that she's going to share today. We've got a lot of folks joining from all over. In just a few moments, I'm going to give you all a shout out, but if you're just joining, feel free to add to the chat box. Let us know where you are in the world, and I will give you all a shout out here shortly. Before we begin, I just want to go over some quick housekeeping rules so that we all feel comfortable and confident on this call today. So lots of crazy things going on in the world. You could be doing anything else with your time, but you're deciding to be with us for the hour. So we would love for you to participate. And in fact, we already had some folks participating before we officially started to record. Lots of folks joined this call early. So I just want to make sure that everyone's voice is being heard. Let's please be respectful of everyone's voice. I'm not afraid to kick people out of this call if we are not respectful of everyone's voice. So please make use of the chat box. If you have anything that you'd like to share, you can drop any questions, any reflections, any of your own tips and tricks that you have found useful in your career journey so that we can continue to make this digital community work for us and share knowledge and support each other here. So I've muted everyone upon entrance, but if you've got anything you'd like to share, just please raise your emoji hand or let me know in the chat box that you'd like to hop off mute, and I will give you permission to do so. Also, feel free to turn your cameras on. I know that digital fatigue and video fatigue are real, but we'd love to invite you to turn your cameras on with us so that you can participate in that way. If you signed up for this conversation, please be looking out for a rewatch email that will include the link to this conversation as well as any links to resources that our guest speaker might bring up throughout the hour so that you can easily access them there. So be looking out for that rewatch email, and you can share this video with your family, your friends, your colleagues and peers, so that we can continue to spread knowledge and support each other. Now, if anyone has any sensitive information and you prefer to be kept anonymous, please feel free to find me in the chat box. You'll find me under Mariella Marie. You can write to me privately there, and I will raise your question or your reflection to our guest speaker and keep you anonymous. And this is being recorded, so keep in mind, if you hop off mute, once I give you permission to hop off mute, if you hop off mute, you will be featured in our live recording. And again, you'll get a rewatch email with the link to the recording as well. Now, the last thing I'll say is we'd love for you to follow Power to Fly on socials and subscribe to Power to Fly's YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats that we've got in store for you this year. And actually, this is chat number 2 of 2022. So I'm really excited to kick off this year with a really, really special topic here that in just a few moments we're going to introduce. But if this is your first time joining a chat where I am moderating, I'll just take a couple seconds to introduce myself before I pass the mic to our guest speaker. So I love speaking about the importance of emotional intelligence at home, at work, and at play. So as a lot of you know, they tend to call them soft skills, but I'm petitioning to call them power skills, as I think we've got a lot of room to grow there with deepening our emotional intelligence. So if anyone is interested in that topic and wants to philosophize with me on this call, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, I invite you to support my project that is called the Positive Force Team. You can go to thepositiveforceteam.org, sign up for our newsletter, or I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker who's calling all the way from New York City today. Julia, let us know a little bit about yourself, how you came to learn about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today.
Cool, yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm so excited to talk to you all about one of my favorite topics, if not my favorite topic, data science. A bit about my background. I started out my career as a mechanical engineer, and I ended up in the aerospace industry. And I was there for a little while, and then I was starting to feel stuck. I wasn't learning a lot. So then I did quite a pivot. I moved into fashion design. I had a fashion design company for a while. And then 2008 happened, and everywhere where I was selling, all the stores closed. So I had to pivot again. I ended up going into math, ended up studying math at Hunter College in New York. Got a graduate degree in applied math. And about that time when I was graduating, so that was about 2012, 13, this world was opening up to us, which is data science. So I thought, well, you know, this is what I loved about my math degree was this intersection of coding, problem solving and math and visualization, all these things I really liked. So that all seemed to be a big part of data science, but I didn't have a lot of what they were looking for in terms of the skills. So I had to kind of work on the coding piece. So I did a boot camp. At the time I did General Assembly. I studied coding there and some intro to data science there back in 2014, 13, 14. So then I was able to kind of move into a quantitative role at JetBlue. They didn't have the data science role, so I ended up doing data science, a version of data science at JetBlue, and then moved into Metis. I taught Metis boot camps, data science boot camps for 3 years, full-time in person, and had an amazing experience with there. Graduated hundreds of students. And then ended up going into industry. I moved into a data science position at New York Times for a while. And now I'm back at teaching. So I'm doing part-time teaching right now because I have a young son that I'm working with during the day and then teaching in the night. So it's a really good kind of mix balance for me.
All right, so Julia, can you please walk us through some of the principal themes for today's conversation? We've got some great questions that have been submitted previous to this chat, so we're going to go through as many of them as possible, but please help us set the stage here. And it's great actually that you kicked us off with speaking about your career journey and just, you know, how things have been flowing since you decided to get into this space. So set the stage up for us and let us know what you plan to cover today.
Sure. So we will definitely have a chance to talk about typical responsibilities of a data scientist. There's just, you can imagine the combination of the technical skills and the soft skills that are essential. So for the technical skills, you're looking at doing a good bit of SQL, getting your hands dirty with data all the time, working with data all the time. So SQL is a big part of that with the analysis and just constant sanity checks. A lot of folks that are data scientists, not all, but the majority, are doing some type of modeling. So using some kind of algorithms for making some kind of predictions. So whether that's with regressions or classifications, we're doing some kind of modeling creation or upkeep or optimization. It's usually at some point in our day. And then a lot of communication. It's a big chunk of our day-to-day, and collaboration with other teammates. So most data scientists are interacting with other stakeholders. So whether it's the project managers or product managers, you know, you're always interfacing with other folks. So communication, collaboration are a big piece. Basic and essential technical skills we'll want to master. We're going to talk about this a bunch, but if you feel like you want to work on some of your background in order to position yourself to get yourself in a position where you can pivot into a data science career, at least start with some training. You're going to want to brush up on some of your math. So linear algebra, stats, probability, and calculus are the big ones. And then you'll want to get some basic understanding of coding language. So most likely Python. So that would be my suggestion is to get some core fundamentals on Python. And then the third bubble there, non-technical characteristics of a successful job seeker, definitely. So I mentioned the communication piece. That is probably the first one that comes to mind. A lot of our job is communicating results to non-technical folks. So being able to speak the language that they're speaking in and being comfortable communicating technical ideas and thoughts to non-technical people is really big. Collaboration and teamwork is also very huge. You're definitely going to have a creativity as being a piece. In my mind, problem solving and creativity are very connected. So both of those things are going to be a huge piece of your day-to-day. I always think of grit too. Grit's a huge one. So we always look for with, you know, in Metis when we're talking to potential students and trying to understand if the folks that are interested in the bootcamp might be a good fit. Like grit is always a big piece of that. And so we want to say that you guys have a stick-to-itness and that you're able to really see a problem through its complete, you know, its entirety. So because that's such a big part of this industry.
And I know you can totally dive in deep on all of these things because there's, like you said, this is it's a budding industry and there's so much going on. And I love that you are just echoing the importance of communication and collaboration and creativity. So I'm looking forward to seeing how you're going to respond to some of these questions that were submitted previous to this conversation. And I just also want to say, if you have any questions and you're joining us live right now, please feel free to drop those questions in the chat box as we do want to hear from you. I think that because we clearly have a fiery situation going on here, let's try to honor the chat box and not hop off of mute, just so that I can keep my eye out here for folks that do want to, you know, abuse the space, because this is a safe digital space. So if you have any questions that come up as we're continuing the conversation, drop those in the chat box so that we can raise that to our guest speakers' awareness. So let's get kicked off with this first question here that kind of digs more into your personal journey, Julia. So what do you wish you would have known about being a data scientist before you started your career? So is there any advice you would have given to, you know, Julia back in, I don't know, you know, before you decided to actually study it as a career as well?
Yeah. That's a really good question. The primary thing that comes to mind is this phenomenon called the Dunningkruger Effect. And you guys may have heard of it before, but just in case you haven't, it's if you look at a plot, the visualization of the Dunning-Kruger, you kind of get a sense that the plot indicates, like, if for folks that are just joining the industry, they feel like they might know more than they do. But the most common is the opposite effect, which is folks that maybe know a bit more feel very insecure and feel like they know very little. And it's a very common phenomenon in this field, specifically because we're all coming from such different backgrounds. So we have this natural tendency to compare ourselves to the person sitting next to us. So the person sitting next to us, in my case, was someone that was like a really strong coder and knew Python for 5 years. And here I was feeling like an imposter because I didn't code for the previous 5 years. I was doing other stuff. So yeah, that's a lot of us. A lot of us were doing other stuff. And so that other stuff is super relevant and so informative, and it's giving you ideas of how you can solve problems or what kind of problems you want to solve, and you know, gives you a broader perspective of problem solving. So it's okay that you're doing other stuff. And, you know, a lot of times we have these other strengths. So mine, I did have that math piece, but I didn't have that coding piece. But we forget what we have. We're only looking at what we don't have. And that's that kind of like the negative side of the Dunning-Kruger. The positive side is maybe some people come in feeling like they have maybe, you know, the newbie cocky phenomenon, which maybe isn't so bad. You know, it at least provides a little bit of fearlessness, but it's important to be aware of on both ends. Because maybe just because you just on the newbie cocky side, like maybe just because you just learned machine learning, remember that, you know, we're still new and we're not experts yet, but mostly on the other side, the much more common side, be aware of this phenomenon that we all have these kind of like insecurities that we feel like we're imposters on some level or another, because there's so many facets to data science. We cannot expect to be experts in them all. So yeah, I think it's like really requires an open-minded and like a growth mindset to be able to be prepared to face something every single day that you have not seen before. And that is the exciting part.
I love that you made it into a positive, because yes, it can be overwhelming. And, a lot of people speak about imposter syndrome, especially these days when there's so much uncertainty and people are deciding to make career pivots and just, figure out how they can add more value to the work that they're doing and the purpose and all of that. And so, when you are comparing yourself, negativity does seem to come up. And so I love that you are trying to find the positive in that, and that, there are lots of opportunities, and to, show empathy, right? That emotional intelligence piece, and to make sure that we're, treating others as we would want to be treated, if, no matter where we are in our career journey. So thank you for highlighting that. This is actually a good segue into the next question here. Could you share some common misconceptions about this role?
Yeah. So I kind of feel like there's almost like two sets of misconceptions. One is maybe from the folks that don't necessarily know a data scientist or haven't been exposed to the data science work. Those people can tend to sometimes think that you are spying on them online and that you're only doing online targeting, advertising targeting. That's been my experience from folks. They're like, oh, so you want my data? You're trying to get my data. I'm like, no. So that can be a misconception about like what the way the outer world may see you. So something maybe to be prepared for. And it might just take a bit of evangelizing when you do a pivot into data science about, like how all the good things that data scientists do, like all of the healthcare, all of the not-for-profit and all of that. Now there's also the misconceptions that are coming from people that are planning on pivoting into data science, at the beginning of their journey. Maybe they think that they're only going to be doing machine learning. They're only going to be developing models all day long. And it's super sexy. It's the cool, sexy part of data science. It's algorithms and all the machine learning therein. But this is a portion of what we do. So maybe if you are developing some models, you're doing a lot of sanity checks and a lot of SQL and a lot of data analysis, data cleaning, data acquisition. So a lot of the prep and the post work, and maybe 10% of your time is actually doing the modeling, or you're doing a lot of engineering and deployment. Some companies want more engineer / data scientists. Some companies want more analytics / data scientists. So there are different kind of flavors of data science, but a lot of times you'll do a lot more engineering. And in that case too, your 10% of your time is the sexy modeling part. Yeah, something that was a surprise to me was the fact that it's a portion of our time, but it's not all of our time.
Thank you for that clarification. I love that you keep bringing up the sexiness of it. And it's just kind of like, let's be real, smoke and mirrors in general about what we think is sexy or attractive in general. I mean, I know that this might not have, or might seem like it has nothing to do with data science, but I'm going to bring up the concept of beauty and how we look at, how we determine what is beautiful and what is art. And, how that is very, it is up to the eye of the beholder, let's say. And so if something is sexy or something is beautiful or appealing to us, we have to know that, maybe it's because it's a hot topic, and maybe it's because, we aren't really fully aware of the longevity of things and how things grow and reshape and metamorph and come into different, awarenesses and shapes. So I just wanted to call that out, because I think that's basically what you're doing as well. It's like, it's sexy because it's a hot topic also, and because everyone, wants their hands on it. But what happens, 10 years from now, and how do we continue to uphold the sexiness or the sexy essence of, data science in this particular case? I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I think the analogy is definitely there. Like, I think it's the same for when I did fashion design. Like 10% of my time was designing, but no, I was doing sales and marketing and all the other prep in the post stuff. So it's very similar. Like you have to kind of build it up. And then once you're building it up, then you're getting to a point where you can do that last final layer, but it's a lot of work, a lot of prep to get there. Yeah, for sure.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's move on to this next question here. And I see we've got folks writing in the chat box. I'm going to raise your questions in just a few moments, but I'd love to get to this third question here that was submitted previous. Every posting I see for data scientist roles list a lot of technical requirements. Which of those are really important to secure a position?
Yeah, I think that's really good. Because it is kind of also connected to the imposter syndrome phenomenon too. So if we feel like we're one of those kind of like perfectionists and we need to feel like we have to check every single box, then that we could be hurting ourselves, because it's in some ways you want to be ready to take a bit of risk when it comes to this stuff. So don't feel like everything has to line up perfectly. It's okay to put yourself out there if all the boxes aren't checked. But on that note, I think it's important to kind of think of their checklist in a prioritized way. So let's say you have their list and you're really interested in the company, so you're going to do a little extra work to kind of see if things are lining up. You're going to prioritize that list in the same way as a boot camp or a graduate degree might present their order of what they're teaching. So that really is a prioritized order. So Python, if that's the coding language they're choosing, and oftentimes it is, then that's first. And then the math skills. So are they mentioning, what kind of math are they looking for? Then that's next. And then SQL, that's there too, maybe in that order. And then what machine learning are they looking for? And that is the order that we teach things in, because those are the non-negotiables. And then there's the stuff as you go along, it's the stuff you learn later in the boot camps and later in the graduate degrees that are nice to have. So the deep learning, maybe the non-relational databases, maybe some of the clustering techniques, those are really kind of advanced. And so maybe those are nice to have. So it's okay to kind of make those assumptions. I mean, some companies may not allow the deep learning to be negotiable, but in my experience, even though they're listed, they haven't gotten there yet. They're not necessarily using the deep learning. They want to, and maybe they want to do it in the future. But so it's really, think of it as a prioritized list, and maybe you're weighting these things appropriately. But let's say you have half of the list met, or 60%, then that's good. That's a good enough start. So I really encourage you to feel comfortable with taking a calculated risk here.
Great. Thank you for that thoughtful response. And so actually now I would love to combine a previously submitted question with a private message that I have here. And if you feel like it's that you prefer to take them separately, feel free to do so as well. So this question reads, how can data analytics be used across multiple disciplines? And I have a private message here. Can Julia briefly run through a recent project she completed from start to finish, talk about some of the various stages along the way? So again, feel free to break that up, or if you can kind of relate the two, feel free to do that as well.
Sure. So I think I'll start with the first question with the multiple disciplines. And let me know if I'm not hitting all of the elements of the question that you want me to, but I'll give it my best shot. So data science could be leveraged. So we can imagine like these different industries as having their own data. So all these companies and all these different industries would have their own type of data. So we can imagine healthcare has its type of data. We can imagine medical certainly having its type of data. We could imagine finance having its type of data. Media is having its type, and then so on. E-commerce would have its type of data. So all of these datas are actually very different. Like we could imagine for our medical that you could have like amazing, really awesome genome data. Or you could, for media, you would have like text data from publications and so on. From e-commerce, you would have clickstream data. For advertising, you'd have clickstream data. So, but the way that you approach handling and analyzing this data is really different depending on that type of data. So a data science bootcamp, like Metis, would provide you the skills to approach the different types. So for example, the text data, you'd be using natural language processing. For clickstream data, you would be doing probably a classification or with a time series or something like that. So the approaches are really interesting, and you can kind of combine the different approaches in different ways, but there's some real defined methods and approaches to different types of data. So in the end, it's all data science. It's all under the data science umbrella, but the approach is so different. If you have the genome data, you're going to be doing deep learning. And if you have image data, you're going to be doing deep learning. So the approaches are very unique, but in the end, under the data science umbrella. So I guess maybe back to the question about a project that I did from start to finish. Can talk about a project I did at New York Times where I developed a recommender for the newsroom. Underneath any of the New York Times articles, you would say, if you like this, you'll like that. So I was developing a recommendation on similar articles. So that is an example of media data being text data and doing really specific data science methods for text data that's under the sub-umbrella of natural language processing and unsupervised learning and recommenders. So recommender would be kind of what you're used to seeing with Netflix and Amazon. If you like this, you like that kind of thing, but it has to do with the similarity and the topics and developing recommendations from that. Probably a bit more details I can get into, but it was interesting also because it required an API. So I got to do some, sometimes you'll hear this term full stack. So like the back end would have been the data science piece. So it's really the algorithms in the background that are the back end here, but there was also a front end. So there was something that a web interface that Newsroom could use and work with. So that was really fun. And it's kind of tangential to what we do. We don't always do front end stuff, but sometimes there's an opportunity to do that. And that was really cool. And I got to do it. It was an autonomous project I was doing that on my own, which has its pluses and minuses. Everything else was on a team basis, but that was kind of independent. So yeah, that was fun.
Great. Thank you so much for unpacking that. And I'm just glad in general that you had a fun and cool experience as some of the words that you were using to explain it. And I hope that answered the question that I received privately. Let us know if you want more clarification there, but I think that you definitely did a good job unpacking that for us, Julia. All right, so let's move on to the next question here that was submitted previous. Can one delve into artificial intelligence and cybersecurity through data science?
Yeah, so artificial intelligence is like, talked about umbrellas, like artificial intelligence is a super umbrella. So data science is in there underneath that one. So everything that we talk about when we talk about data science approaches and some of the things we've already mentioned, so the machine learning, the natural language processing, the deep learning, that's like all underneath that AI umbrella. AI also has some other things. Primarily, something that comes to mind is like robotics. That is not necessarily what we get into. It's more tangential, but would be so cool if we did get into it. I'm sure it's something some people do behind the scenes or maybe in the weekend or something. But yeah, it's it's a bit tangential, but that we're doing it's like a big chunk of what's under AI is data science. So for sure, it's in my mind, it's definitely AI. Cybersecurity is, I would say, it's its own thing. The keyword being security. If you looked at the kind of like the track of cybersecurity study, everything would be like security would be the focus. So database security, data security, cryptology, password security, like all these things. So it really is kind of unique. However, if you were in the data science world, it'd be pretty much intuitive to pivot over to that area, because it would require additional study for sure. But you would be familiar with the core pieces, the database, the coding, the all of the layers therein, but you would need that extra understanding about this emphasis on security. With data science, where we understand the real basics of security, but we don't really get involved with too much beyond that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that thoughtful response here. We got more questions coming up in the chat box, but before I get to those, I just want to kind of bridge into these questions here with the previous submitted question that reads, do you have any tips on which coding language to learn first? I know you briefly touched on this in the beginning, but can you review this and just maybe tell us even why you think that folks should learn it first?
Yeah, so it's interesting because maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, the jury was still out, but now the jury has concluded that Python is the way to go. The reason being that Python has evolved to be something that you can do basically anything with. So what does that mean? You could develop an API with Python. You could develop any of the deep learning code that you would need with Python. You could do complex mathematics with Python, visualizations. All of this open source code has evolved so quickly and so exhaustively, whereas other languages are just trying to catch up. So R was maybe a 50-50. They were running neck to neck for a long time, but has been slower to evolve in all of these capacities and interfaces. Again, going back to Python, it has this SQL interpreter or equivalent, or you can do anything in essentially almost anything in SQL with Python. Anything you would need to do as a data scientist really is available to you. So that's why R has been slower to catch up. That said, there's some people that think that, maybe in the future Scala will be in the lead, but it's probably a good bit down the line. It's not as easy to work with. It's a little bit more finicky, and there's a bit more syntax that's required. Python. Python's just really, really quick to develop a line of code that will function as compared to some of these other languages. So yeah, that would be by and far the one that employers are looking for. If you did just some research and looked at and did some web scraping and looked at all the data science jobs that you could, Python's definitely in the running. I would say, if I had to guess, probably by 80% ish.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. It's great to hear that. I mean, I'm sure there's probably several debates and perspectives, and I am not one to speak to that, but I just, from the interviews that I've done over the past couple of years, I hear that. When I had to interview data scientists, we don't know, do what you feel best and, use these top three, and everyone kind of had different answers. So it's interesting to hear that you're saying, the jury's in, this one for sure is the key to getting in. So thank you for that. Because I know a lot of folks are, looking to essentially get jobs. And so they want to make sure that they're able to speak the language that the hiring managers are looking for. So speaking of looking for jobs, we've got some folks writing in the chat box here specifically about recruiting and how to kind of, win the recruiter over. So do you have, or can you recommend a project to impact a recruiter? What kind of project would you recommend to do?
Oh, good question. Yeah. So if you could do a project, I would recommend doing one that is pretty original. So maybe on your first project, you might not have the skills that are there yet to really make it an original. So maybe do some practice projects. Kaggle, Kaggle, is a really good place to get your feet wet with getting a sense of where to get started with machine learning. It's a competitive forum, so you can compete, get some practice there, get a sense of how well you're doing, and then try to find an original data set that you're able to do an interesting analysis on. So my primary recommendation is do something that is within the realm of your domain knowledge or your passion. So those will always be the best projects, will be the ones you're super excited about. So if you're coming from a journalist space, maybe it's going to be more of an LMP, or but more importantly, if you're coming from the journalist space, you're going to create a really nice blog to accompany your project. So whatever data you're really just so excited about, that's the one that is gonna help you create a project that's really exciting. I think yeah. So sometimes to acquire these data sets for the dream projects might require some web scraping. So that is something that is still in kind of like the entry level quadrant of data science. So it's not too hard to get started with web scraping, because sometimes you'll just need to get that original data to have that original project. But I think that would really set you apart. But more than anything, try to have a blog accompanying your project so you can really talk to us about your process and your idea, and beautiful visualizations, and that will really contribute to a strong narrative that will turn the heads of the recruiters.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Actually, this is a great follow-up question. It's kind of personal, so feel free to speak to some projects that have caught your eye. But this question reads, do you remember one of your portfolio projects that landed your first job? What was the project about? What languages or software did you use? And how did you find your inspiration? Again, you can pull this from your own personal experience, or if there has been a portfolio that you want to bring light to now, the way that you liked how they navigated that.
Yeah. So I think I could talk about, with my portfolio, I had going back to my previous point about doing the thing that you're really excited about and grab the data from the domain that you're really excited about. I did have a fun project on from a fashion design deep learning project. And it just so happened that the company I was working for, they were looking for a deep learning, some work with deep learning at that time. So those two things intersected nicely. But I do think the fact that it was a bit original, there was a bit of creativity in there, and just a lot of passion, and in terms of what my exploration entailed. I think that really helped. So yeah, it was a data set that was already out there. So there was a lot of images available. So I mentioned data scraping. You don't necessarily have to do that, because it can be really, it could be time consuming. But yeah, do your endless Googling first to see if you can get some really interesting data set first. But if you need to scrape, then you scrape. But I didn't. I found something from University of Hong Kong. There was a really awesome data set. So yeah, that was great. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of that? There was.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that you basically hit the nail on the head there, but they were just asking about, and I just lost it here. Yes. So do you remember one of your portfolio projects that landed your first job? Was it, what was the project about? What languages, software did you use? And how did you find the inspiration?
Okay, right. And I also was thinking about a student that maybe did a really good job with that. They had just really, they had some interesting data on coming from the UN. They had UN data, and they made these incredible visualizations, and then they applied at the UN and they got the job. I also wanted to show that anecdote because it was really a targeted project, but sometimes that's a good way to go as well. Is if you really want to work for someone, you can make it real obvious and do a project about them.
That's great. I love that. I love that. Kudos to that person. And thanks for sharing that, because I think that's helpful. Instead of maybe, of course, creating anything that we want, but also if you see a specific solution to, a company or an organization that is currently looking on how to solve those problems, to just do it and cross your fingers and see if you can, start to network and just put out the vibes to get an interview. So we've got folks saying great advice, and thanks for sharing. So thank you, Julia.
Awesome.
All right, so we've got about 15 minutes left. I want to cover a couple more questions, and I know that you also have some more things to share and you can present your screen whenever you like as well. So, but let's move into demystifying, what to do before, applying for the job. Do you need, what kind of experience and educational experience do you need? So this question reads to that. I have over a decade of work experience in administrative and customer service, but I never went to college. Is a bachelor's degree really necessary, or will a boot camp certificate be enough to get me into the field?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So a boot camp certificate is definitely enough. You may find that you may have to hustle a bit more. So maybe you have that much more on your portfolio or that much more on your resume to kind of give your employer a better sense of who you are. Because, some people want to check that box. And if you provide them other boxes they can check with just providing them a more, maybe a broader portfolio or some more projects. So I can talk about Metis, and that we had folks coming from Metis that prior to that they had bachelor degrees. So they're coming in a bit younger sometimes, but not always. And they did find jobs afterwards. So it is definitely possible. We've definitely seen it happen. And I think that's really just such a great piece of the bootcamp approach, is that you can just kind of leapfrog ahead. If you have the grit and the mindset, then it can definitely happen.
Great. And I'm curious to hear your response to this question here. Speaking about soft skills, which many of you know that I am revamping that into power skills, but this question reads, what are the most important soft skills or power skills, in my opinion, to have in order to succeed in the tech industry?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. Because I want to say all of them. The ones I can think of anyway. So I'm going to just mention a few that come to mind. So the communication, the teamwork, the problem solving, creativity, organizational skills. They're all so important. Communication comes up first, because a lot of our times like I mentioned earlier, I just say it, we spend a big chunk of our time communicating. So whether it's in in the format of a deck. We're communicating results, or we're communicating to our teammates how things are going and how our work is progressing and what we're seeing and how this data looks, and this makes sense and this doesn't. These conversations are happening a lot. So it's really, really important, which is really nice, I think, because a lot of us maybe are coming from, especially if we're coming from non-technical backgrounds, like the idea of working in a silo isn't great. So fear not, you will not have to work in a silo as a data scientist. You're really working with others. That's been my experience talking with the data scientists I know. That's certainly been my experience. So that teamwork is there. And then, problem solving, like some of the things you would think of more traditionally in line with the technical field, they're certainly there. But again, we mentioned before, like this creativity piece is also there because of not only thinking always about different ways of a problem solving and thinking about them creatively, but also with our communication, like thinking about like what is the best way. And I think that takes a good bit of creativity as well. What skills am I missing? What would you say are the common ones of the power skills?
Oh my goodness. Wow. Like, as you said, all of them. And I think the tricky part is, how do you show that in an interview or in a cover letter and a resume, right? So I think that we're all figuring that out right now. And so I think that it's nice to think that we can experiment in that space. Like, how do you demonstrate emotional intelligence in an interview? How do you demonstrate empathy in a cover letter or a resume? Should we demand space for that in a resume, because we do find it important? But yeah, I think that for me, the biggest piece, and I mean, I'm biased because I love speaking about it, but it's emotional intelligence, which actually involves a lot. It's a huge umbrella that has a lot of things underneath it. But with emotional intelligence is self-awareness. So for me, that's like the foundation of emotional intelligence. So if you are curious to be more connected to, who you are, what drives you, what is your purpose, how you can get rid of self-limiting beliefs and, generate a different mindset so that you are healthy and the people around you are healthy. I mean, it takes a lot of work. It's definitely not something that we can just check a box on. But if people are interested in developing that power skill, I would say like self-awareness is key. And that comes through, in my opinion, one big tip is just try to shut down technology as much as you can to have some time to listen to yourself, and then move into the world with your own, awareness. Because I think we need more voices to be shared, more different perspectives. And if we don't take time to understand ourselves, then we're kind of playing the same game. But I can speak a lot about emotional intelligence, and I know that we don't have enough time right now. So we've actually got about 9 minutes. And I just want to, Julia, I know that you have some more things to share with us. So as you are, feel free to share your screen right now, but I would love to invite the folks who are here with us live to drop their preferred ways of connecting in the chat box. I see we've got folks already doing that. Because we only have about 8 minutes left, I do want you all to, maximize your time here, and maybe you can reach out to each other to, ask, these questions that we're asking each other here live. What are those important power skills, and how can we show that, and how can we continue to learn? So continue to drop your LinkedIn's or whatever preferred ways of connecting in the chat box. And Julia, please take us away with sharing how we can continue to stay in touch with you, what you are excited to offer folks who are interested in working with you and just learning about data science.
Awesome. Okay, can you see this screen? Okay, cool. So just a bit about Metis and a shameless plug on what we could offer you guys in terms of an option for you to pursue a path. So we have a couple different approaches. So we'll cover those here. So in terms of different tracks, we have these different boot camps. So here we're seeing data analytics, and data science. So data analytics would provide background in exploratory data analysis, linear regression and web scraping, business fundamentals and data practitioners. Data science would provide all of that, as well as machine learning and NLP and unsupervised learning. We then have data science and engineering, which is subtracting the business fundamentals, but including the introduction to data engineering. And then lastly, data science and machine learning is all of the above, as well as including deep learning. So we have boot camps coming up. The next one starts January 31st. You see here, it says application deadline is January 3rd, but we are flexible with that. So that would be just for the initial application. So we could connect you with our admissions and kind of move you along in that process. Other than that, we're starting another one the following month. So this is the flex format, which is online, as we see here. So a bit about our alumni. We have, as you can see, over 2,100 members. They're coming from all sorts of industries, any background you can imagine: finance, healthcare, media, government, private sector. Folks are coming from different areas and moving into different careers, even from the data science track. So data scientists, of course, but also analysts, software developers, engineers, data journalists, etc. And people are coming, like we said, from all sorts of backgrounds. So from high school, from non-technical, I've had students come from every kind of background imaginable. Artists designers. We had I remember teaching a chef once. It was just so cool to see people coming from all these different areas to study with us and move into data science. So just an idea of where our graduates work. And so we have, let me go back if I can. We have a Metis admissions prep that we'd like to offer. So it's free. So this is including 5 modules. So these are the big things that are really important concepts that we need you to brush up on before entering into the boot camp. So linear algebra, calculus, prop, and stats, and then a module on Python. So that you can find at this Metis. This is metis.com. Sorry, this is metis.com admissions dash prep. And we'll share that link in the chat too.
A quick question that just came up in the chat. Is there a mentorship program for after graduating, and if not, how do you, what's, the utopia for once people graduate?
Yeah, so we do provide the career support. So the weighting is really on the folks that just graduated, but we're really there to support anyone that's a Metis graduate. So that would be in terms of the careers. In terms of mentorship, it's really would revolve more around the alumni channel, but there's really a good group there that is really active and is definitely there to support each other. Yeah. And then we also have a beginner Python and math course. So if you want to go a bit deeper on these like building blocks that we mentioned, we have that. So these are the upcoming dates for the live online part-time evening class for beginner Python and math. And then a course on introduction to data science. So essentially this would be like the more or less sped up version of the entire that machine learning data science track we mentioned. So it kind of covers all of the pieces, but on a weekly basis, where the flex programs that we mentioned with those tracks would be a month at a time for each of those core pieces. So for example, a month on exploratory data analysis, 1 month on linear regression, classification, etc. So again, introduction to data science is the sped up version of that. Please feel free to reach out to admissions at thisismetis.com. And just want to point out, we want to offer you guys a discount, 10%, if you use a code PowerToFly10. So yeah, and also just you'll see it on our admissions page, but we do offer discounts for folks that are coming from different areas. So if you are if you're coming from a background of the non-traditional backgrounds, then we would offer an additional discount for you guys. So definitely check that out on the admissions page.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julia, for sharing. This is really exciting. And thank you, Amy, for coming in and answering some questions that are in the chat box. Just in case folks are watching this, rewatching this, and they didn't have access to the chat. So we had a question about scholarships. Are scholarships offered? And Amy responded here that you all offer a $2,000 to $3,000 diversity scholarship for boot camp. So I'm sure you can find out more info on the website there to learn more. And also I had a question here about will you all be getting the link to this video? So yes, if you signed up for this conversation, you will get a rewatch email with the link to this video so you can rewatch it yourself, or you can share with your colleagues, your peers, your community. And then of course, we'll have resources, links to resources that Julia has mentioned in this conversation. So we are actually at our time. This has been wow, the time has flown by. And I know that we started off a little fiery here, but I think that I'm very happy with all of the information that you shared throughout this conversation, all the great questions that were submitted during the conversation and also previous to the conversation. Julia, is there anything else you'd like to say, just to maybe, leave us with some food for thought, words of encouragement? You've done such a fantastic job here sharing your tips and tricks and your perspective just in this space in general. So I thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say, if you are willing and eager to pivot, it is absolutely in your power to do so. Everyone has this thing maybe that, like we talked about Dunningkruger. For me, myself, I thought I was too old to change. I had come from I had been in career for 10, 15 years, and I was switching. But everyone has this kind of fear to overcome, but fear not. It's a great field. I love it. I'm so happy I entered into this field, and I think it's right. If you're excited about it, it's right.
Awesome. Thank you so much for leaving us on that hopeful, optimistic, positive note. I encourage everyone to, bring your authentic selves to this industry that we need you to share your voice and, really elevate those power skills that we mentioned in the beginning. Please reach out to Julia and their beautiful program that they're setting up for you all. If you have any questions, just find that on their website. And for those of you who are rewatching this video, thank you for rewatching. For those who attended this live video, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your year. Thank you so much, everyone.